Are you ready to cut through the clutter to today's top news? Today is Tuesday, January 4th, 2022. This is Rebekah Koffler with Censored But Not Silenced, and I'm ready to deliver to you Cut to the News, my daily newsletter. I put out Cut to the News every morning in the print version, or rather electronic version, and I send it out by email. But recently, I have decided to issue a video version of the same news so that you can listen to it anywhere you want while driving into work or doing some chores at home or whatever it is that you would like to multitask with. I scan approximately 30 or more sources every morning manually. There's no algorithm. I go through all of these major news outlets, such as the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Washington Post, New York Times, Fox News, New York Post, The Hill, and a bunch more, including some of the British sources and Israeli sources. And then I pick what I believe everybody should know. Everything you should know, nothing you don't. And I put out a very condensed version of the top news. So this is what you're about to hear. Let's do it. Leading the news. Zuckerbucks shouldn't pay for election is the headline that is brought to us today from the Wall Street Journal. Let's see what this piece is about. The 2020 pandemic election wasn't stolen, but it sure was a super spreader of bad precedents. More than a year later, we're still getting information about the huge private money that underwrote official government voting records in 49 states. Much is still unknown, but lawmakers already know enough to ban this practice. A nonprofit called the Center for Technology and Civic Life, or CTCL, funded by Mark Zuckerberg, says it gave $350 million to nearly 2,500 election departments in the course of the 2020 campaign. Last month, it posted its 990 text form for the period, with 199 pages listing grants to support the safe administration of voting amid COVID-19. Some conservatives see this largesse of Zuckerbucks as a clever plot to help Democrats win. CTCL consistently gave bigger grants and more money per capita to counters that voted for Biden, says an analysis by the Capital Research Center. Its tally for Georgia, to pick one state, shows average grants of 1.41 per head in Trump areas and $5.33 in Biden ones. A conservative group in Wisconsin suggests that extra voter outreach funded by CTCL could have boosted Mr. Biden's turnout there by something like 8,000 votes. It isn't hard to see why they're concerned. If you would like to know more, go to Wall Street Journal and read this article that is titled "Zuckerbucks Shouldn't Pay for Elections." The next piece comes to us from the Washington Times. My friend and a very brave lady, we call each other the rebels, Sherry Chumley. She wrote a piece today, an opinion piece, titled China Has a Point About Sissy Men. Yes, Cheryl, I know you're quite a rebel. What a title. The Chinese Communist Party has just kicked off a culture campaign to make sure men are dressing and behaving like men, and that the effeminate look, dubbed by the government as the masculinity crisis, won't cripple President Xi Jinping's push to become the leading world power. All righty, yes, the commies are cracking down on sissy men, says Cheryl, as the communist census put it. Dictatorial tactics to the side, America might want to take a memo. Manly men are becoming hard to find. America's boys are being taught to play with dolls, to cry when upset, to wear dresses they want, to paint their fingernails, and to pick out their hair bows and put on their pretty as they prepare for school. And to think of their gender selves in any way they wish. Don't want to be a boy today, Johnny? That's quite okay. Be Josephine instead. To continue reading this piece, go to the Washington Times. Cheryl Chumley, quite the rebel. In the politics section, we always start off with today's schedule for President Biden. Let's see what he had today on the agenda. At 10:10 a.m., President received the President Daily Brief. At 2 p.m., he met with White House COVID response team. All righty. Next, according to The Hill, Democrats hit pause on Biden's climate social spending package. Senate Democrats are putting President Biden's climate and social spending plan on the back burner as they plan to debate voting rights legislation this month and hold a vote on changing the Senate filibuster rules. The next announcement comes from The Hill. Representative Devin Nunes from California formally has resigned from Congress on Monday as the California Republican departs to run former President Trump's new media and technology company. Good man, Devin Nunes, that is. We wish them the best. The next headline comes from the British newspaper, The Guardian. Bannon and allies bid to expand pro-Trump influence to local US politics. As some of you know, my husband, Keith Koffler, who is the editor at Fox News Digital, is also Steve Bannon's biographer. So if you're interested in Steve Bannon and his philosophy, which is quite unique and complex and very important and significant, and it influenced the thinking of President Donald Trump, you can check out the biography that my husband wrote, which is called Bannon, Always the Rebel by Keith Koffler. Back to the piece that was put out by The Guardian. Key Donald Trump loyalists Steve Bannon and Michael Flynn are at the forefront of a drive to expand Trumpist influence at the local level of US politics while forging ahead with efforts aimed at promoting baseless claims that Joe Biden's 2020 election victory was fraudulent. Well, I'm not sure about the baseless piece because, as we just read in the leading the news section, a piece by the Wall Street Journal, that there are all sorts of things that did not seem quite right. But We report, you decide. Moving on to the next section, national security. The Patriot Post has an opinion piece that is called The State of the Military, US military, that is. For the United States military, the picture looks particularly bleak on many fronts. This comes at a particularly bad time for America, given the fact that China and Russia are building up their military forces and fielding new weapons, such as hypersonic weapons. The military, particularly those forces needed to fight a war with China, is not up to the level it used to be. Well, as a former DIA intelligence officer and expert on Russian doctrine and strategy, as well as the author of Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America, I concur. I'm also very concerned about the Blue Force, which is what we call US and allied forces, and its ability, or rather challenges, related to fighting two wars with nation states like China and Russia potentially concurrently. We've been focusing on counterterrorism operations, the Pentagon has, that is, for 20 years. So we haven't really been thinking long-term, while China and Russia have been modernizing their militaries, and both countries view the United States as their security threat number one. So check out this piece in the Patriot Post to learn about the current state of US military. Moving on in the national security section. History as it happens. From Taiwan to Ukraine, new conflicts test Biden's foreign policy. This piece comes from the Washington Times, and it also comes with a podcast called History as It Happens. President Biden is beginning his second year in office, facing many of the same foreign policy problems that awaited his arrival in the White House, some with the potential to explode into full-blown conflict, despite his efforts to restore calm and confidence among US allies. In the international section, we have a piece titled Global Imams Council Bans Muslims from Attending Beijing Winter Olympics. Great idea. China absolutely has to be held accountable for the Wuhan virus pandemic that it unleashed on the world. So, according to the piece, the Global Imams Council of Muslim faith leaders on December 30th banned followers of Islam from participating in and attending the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing, citing oppression of Uyghurs in China's northwestern Xinjiang region. For the rest of the piece, please go to Epoch Times. With regard to the coronavirus, a piece also in Epoch Times titled Federal Court Grants Navy SEALs Preliminary Injunction on Lawsuit over COVID-19 Vaccine Mandate. In our money section, we have a piece titled Biden Aims to Reduce Meat Prices with More Regulations, Federal Spending. It comes from Fox Business. The next piece in the money section comes from Financial Times. Apple becomes first $3 trillion company after boost from pandemic demand. Apple has become the first company to hit a market capitalization of $3 trillion after its value rose by $1 trillion in less than 16 months as the coronavirus pandemic turbocharged big tech. The next piece comes from CNBC. OPEC Plus expected to stick to planned oil output hike as Omicron COVID cases soar. An influential group of some of the world's largest oil producers will meet on Tuesday to discuss the next phase of output policy as energy investors weigh the potential impact of soaring Omicron COVID cases. Led by OPEC kingpin Saudi Arabia and non-OPEC leader Russia, the Energy Alliance is in the process of unwinding record supply cuts of roughly 10 million barrels per day. The historic production cut was put in place in April 2020 to help coronavirus pandemic created demand for crude. CNBC. And our penultimate section is called You Should Also Know. Washington, D.C. area is hit with widespread power outages. Washington, D.C. and areas surrounding the nation's capital were hit with widespread power outages on Monday due to a winter storm that brought several inches of snow in the region, according to Fox Business. I can attest to that. Since I live in the Northern Virginia area, which is about 11 miles away from Washington, D.C., I can attest looking outside my window, there's still snow lying around. The kids' schools are canceled, and yeah, hopefully they're gonna reopen again because we need our kids educated. All right, the next one, Dr. Robert Malone to Joe Rogan. US in mass formation psychosis over COVID-19. Key mRNA contributor, Dr. Robert Malone, a prominent skeptic of mandatory COVID-19 vaccinations, suggested to popular podcaster Joe Rogan days after Malone was suspended from Twitter during an interview that the United States is in the midst of a mass formation psychosis. Love Joe Rogan. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'm launching my own podcast called Censored But Not Silenced. I would love to be the female version of Joe Rogan, minus all the filthy language that works for him. It's his personality, but I really respect the guy. Joe Rogan leads move to ghetto after Twitter bans Dr. Robert Malone, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. There's a piece on Fox Business. In fact, I'm establishing my Getter account today. I've been active on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at Rebekah0132. Rebecca spelled a little differently, Rebekah 0132. But since Twitter and other big tech representatives have been quite active with regard to censorship and really suppressing free speech, I think most of us, people who support freedom of speech, which is a fundamental American right, we're going to be migrating to Twitter. And I encourage everybody to do the same. Another disturbing piece comes from Fox News. Worst jailbreak in US history. And Americans pay the price with skyrocketing crime rates. Yes, the crime has been really through the roof. in our country. I wonder why. Could it be that the police and those kinds of narratives have something to do with that? So the New York, or rather Fox News piece reads, in 2020, our nation's state and federal prison populations plummeted 15% to the lowest level since 1992. At the same time, murders skyrocketed nearly 30% to the highest level since 1998. By the middle of last year, local jail populations similarly shrank by an astonishing 25%. In raw numbers, state and federal authorities reduced their prison populations by 214,000 in 2020, and local authorities reduced their jail populations by 185,000 compared to 2019. This is the worst jailbreak in American history and was committed in broad daylight. Our nation has paid the price. The so-called coronavirus protocols caused most of these reductions. Last year, the federal government sent thousands of inmates home in response to the pandemic. Rikers Island in New York City released 1,500 criminals. And Chicago's largest prison released a quarter of its inmates. To read the rest of the article, go to Fox News. And then, in conclusion, our final section is called Guilty Pleasures. And we have a piece from the Babylon Bee. As you know, Babylon Bee is a satire site. Top predictions from Babylon Bee for 2022. I'm just gonna read just a few of them to you, and then if you'd like to see the whole piece, you go to Babylon Bee, okay? So January 6th, second insurrection attempt canceled. January 20th, Pfizer unveils booster shots 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. January 21, men break every record ever held by women. January 22nd, Harvard gender studies professor discovers 5 new pronouns. Imagine that. January 23rd, the Babylon Bee discovers a 3rd conservative joke. January 25th, Obama releases another memoir. January 27th, Mark Zuckerberg finally learns how to smile with his eyes. February 1st, WHO, or the World Health Organization, runs out of Greek letters for variants and starts naming them after their Muppets. And February 2nd, January 6th committee finally catches your grandma. So if you like this newsletter, please subscribe, go to White House Dossier and click on the tab called Cut to the News. This newsletter is free and it will save you time of going into various sources. It will deliver right into your mailbox every morning, top news of the day. And I will be posting here the video version of this newsletter. So again, I'm Rebekah Koffler. I'm a former DIA intelligence officer and author of Putin's Playbook, Russia's Secret Plan to Defeat America. This is what all of these, books are about. In my background, you can go on Amazon and purchase the book. It will explain to you everything that you need to know about Russia, Putin, and why Putin is acting up right now, what's up with Putin and Ukraine, and all the questions that you might have with regard to this topic. If you like this channel, please Subscribe and spread the word. Let your friends and family know. Thank you for listening. This is Rebekah Koffler with Censored But Not Silenced. So long.